Hi everybody, John Helfen here. Today I wanted to provide an overview of Autodesk 123D. On the screen you see a little toy boat that we're going to create during this demonstration. Hopefully it will provide you a foundation to start getting involved in 3D design. Autodesk 123D is our consumer level product that is the little brother to Fusion and Inventor Fusion, and the little brother to Autodesk Inventor. Although Autodesk Inventor is much more powerful, 123D is a great way to get started. So I'm going to end up closing this model down and walking through the process of building it from scratch. But before I get started, I do have some imagery that will allow you to see the process we're about to go through. So what we'll start with is a basic block, which will represent the hull. It's a primitive that you can create within 123D very easily. From that point, the steps are very simple. If you can draw a 2D shape, it's just a matter of using the faces on the model to draw 2D shapes to sculpt the model to look like what you want it to look like. Whether you're adding material or removing material, you'll be able to select that during the process to shape your 3D model. So you start out with a cube or a rectangle here. We will then on the top face sketch out the bow of the boat and cut that material away. We can then sketch on the side of the boat to give the front of the hull a little bit of a curvature and cut that away. So we can begin to start to get the look of the boat. We'll fill at the bottom to make it smooth so that it actually runs through the water a little more easily. We can then round the back of the boat just to cut off some of the hard edges. We'll sketch on the top face to offset the outer loop or edge of the boat to create railings. We can then create the control tower using just a basic rectangle. We can cut a window out so that our captain can see out of the boat. We'll create a standing area and smooth that out. And then we'll add a little chamfer on the back to just add some style to it. And then we'll create the smokestack itself and hollow that out. So those are the steps we're going to walk through. Let me go ahead and close this boat and I will start us through the process. So I'm going to start from a blank screen just so that we don't think any magic is happening in the background. You can see everything happening live. Before we get started, a quick overview of the interface. On the left is your browser. It's going to be where sketches and components show up as you create them while you're doing your modeling. The menu bar at the top is all your tools you'll need to create your models. For example, in the sketch area, if you left click, you get draw, new sketch, rectangle, some of the tools you're going to need to actually do some of the sketching. Under create, you have the ability to do extrude and add fillets and chamfers. Essentially your modeling operations that you will apply to the sketches you create. On the right hand side we have the navigation cube or view cube. This is common across AutoCAD, Inventor, Revit, and is an easy way to rotate your model and look at it from different directions. Down in the bottom right we have our scale and our units. Right now we're set to millimeter. You can select the units that are appropriate for yourself. We're going to stay with millimeter for this presentation. And then finally at the bottom we have the navigation menu. It has our navigation wheel, a pan, zoom, rotate, and our visibility options to change from shaded to things like wireframe or hidden view for looking at the model in different styles. Primarily your navigation is going to happen with your middle mouse button. You can zoom with your middle mouse wheel. You can pan if you press your middle mouse button. And you can also hold shift down and press your middle mouse button to get rotate. And I'll be using those throughout the demonstration. So to begin, we will start out with a primitive. We're going to start with a primitive box. And what this does is allows you to create a box very quickly. It automates the process a little bit. When you start your box, it brings up your origin planes. These are the X, Y, Y, Z, and X, Z planes that intersect at 0, 0. So this point is the center of the universe for this part. If I hover over it, you can see that the dimensions are at 0, 0. That just kind of proves it. And you'll notice the pop-up tells me I can hold shift to lock the sketch plane. This is important because if you notice as I move from the bottom plane here up to the side, my cursor snaps up so that I'm sketching on this sidewall. If I move over, it's sketching on this vertical wall. As you start to get closer to the center, you can see with a little bit of movement, it might snap to a different plane. So to help ease that connection or that flipping between planes, if I'm hovered over the bottom plane and I hold shift down, you'll notice it removes these two planes up here and it keeps me locked on that plane. If I go up to the side plane and I hold shift, it locks me in that plane. It just makes it a little easier to ensure you're going to start drawing in that plane. So I'm going to hold my shift key down and start on the bottom plane. And I'm going to left click at the 0 point. And now I can remove, let me try that again. I'm going to hold my shift key down. I'm going to left click at 0. And I'm going to start drawing on that plane. And I get a heads up display telling me the dimensions of my model. So I'm going to start by entering 200 for the length. And you'll notice my dimension is highlighted in blue, so that if I just type 200 and hit tab, it will lock that 200 in, and it moves me to this dimension, the 51 right now, where I can type in an exact dimension there as well. You don't have to do this, but it will help as you start to draw your model to know exactly how things are located and their size. Once I have the dimensions in, I can left click to create the shape. And then it automatically, because I'm creating a primitive, wants me to add height to this cube. So I'm going to set mine to about 60 millimeters. I think that's a good rough size for our hull. And we have our basic shape to start from. Next, what we want to do is we want to use this top face. We originally sketched on the origin planes that popped up. But now that I have a model in place, most of your sketching is going to happen on faces within the model. In this case, we want to sketch on this top face, and we want to create a couple of arcs that represent the bow of the boat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my sketch tools. I'm going to select draw. And what I want to do is I want to hover over this top face and then hover to the midpoint of that line. And you'll notice a little triangle pops up. And that means that if I left click there, this line will begin at the midpoint of that line on the top face. And that's what I want to do, because I want to make sure this line is running right down the middle of the part. And you'll notice I get some heads-up display that shows as I move towards the center of the part, it snaps a dotted line and shows me that I'm in the center of the part. Now that's important because I want to mirror over this line in just a minute. If I left-click again, it places the end of the line and it lets me continue my line command. If I right-click and hit OK, it will end the command and let me start a new command. Next, what I want to do is use the 3-point arc from under the sketch menu to create an arc that represents the bow of the boat. And the 3-point arc lets you pick the starting point, the end point, and then the third point controls the actual arc itself. So I'm going to hover over the end point of this line and left click. And then I'm going to go pick where I want my arc to end. And I'm going to pick somewhere, just shy of the midpoint of the boat. And left click. And now my third point lets me control the shape of the arc. So I'm going to just get something that looks roughly like the bow of a boat. Doesn't have to be perfect, but if I look at it from the top, you can see that kind of, looks like the front of a boat, and that works for me. So I'm going to go back to my home view. And now I want to mirror this. I could draw another arc here, but it would be very hard to get it to exactly match this. So I'm going to left click on that line, and it brings up the pill. The pill is essentially a context-sensitive menu that changes based on what environment you're in, whether you're sketching or modeling. In this case, I'm sketching and I selected a line. So these are the things I can do with this line. I can copy it, I can move it, I can mirror it. And in this case, I'm going to mirror. And when I click that, it's going to change the pill to operations that are important for the mirroring that's taking place. The one that's selected right now allows me to select other lines. So if I wanted to select another circle or another piece of geometry to mirror, I could do that. You'll notice the white arrow means that there's enough information to continue on this section. The red arrow means there is not enough information. So this option is wanting us to select a mirror line. So if I left click and select the mirror line, I can then select the line I want to flip this arc over, and you'll see that takes place. And now I have a white arrow here, meaning we could continue. So I'm going to right click and hit OK. And I now have created 3 profiles, or 3 closed loops, that I could then use modeling operations against. So I'm going to left click to select that region. I'm going to hold my shift key down on my keyboard, and I'm going to left click on this other corner, because those are the two corners I want to remove that material. When I do that, the pill changes again, and it says I can do certain things with this, what's the items that are selected. And what I want to do is extrude, and it brings up the manipulator we saw when we created this first cube, and I'm going to drag it straight down. Now, because it's right on the face, it knows that there's material there, and it's opted for a cut operation, which is what we want. But if for some reason you don't want that, you could also set it to join using the options in the pill. I could set it to intersect, and it previews what you would get. And this is the intersection of the cube and these corners. Or I could create a new component. We're not going to get into the new components for this demonstration. Right now we're going to stick with the cut. And I could either right click and hit OK, or I could double click anywhere in the background, not on the part, to apply those changes. So now we have the basic shape of the hull from the top. Next we want to sketch on this side face and carve out the front of the boat so that it can move through the water a little easier. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch, and I'm going to choose to project geometry. What I'm going to do is first it asks me what sketch plane I want to work with, and I want to work on this side plane, so I'm going to select that. And then it asks me what I want to project. I'm going to project the front of this boat to this plane, and you'll notice as I hover over it, the red line gets projected to the plane I just selected. And the reason for this is I'm going to use this as a place to create a rectangle just to help give me some geometry to draw the shape I want to use to make this next cut. So what I'm going to do now is create a rectangle, and I'm going to use the bottom corner or bottom of that line we just projected as my starting point, and I'm going to move up to the corner here in the back of the boat and lock that in. So now if I look at this from the right, I have geometry that I can select and use to draw new shapes with. So to draw the bow of the boat, what I want to do is use again a 3-point arc. I'm going to select the red dot, which is at where the first cut from the front of the boat meets the side of the boat. And then I'm going to select something just above the midpoint, maybe on the front of the bow, as my end point. And then in the middle, I'm going to just create something that looks like the front of the boat. That it doesn't have to be perfect. That looks good for me. And I now have a new set of shapes that I can do modeling actions against. I have this profile, I have this profile, and this profile. I'm going to use the front profile, and I'm going to select from the pill Extrude, and I get my manipulator again to pick which way. If I go one direction or the other, it doesn't matter. But you'll notice this time, last time we had a cut operation, and this time it's doing a join. Because this sketch does not live right on that face, it assumes we want to add material to connect those two. In this case, that's not what we want. So we're going to use the options in the pill. The far right button allows you to change the operation type. And I'm going to set it to a cut. And if I hold my shift key down and press my middle mouse button, I can rotate and kind of look at that preview. And that looks good. That's exactly what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my home view, and I'm going to double click to complete that. Let's get back to home view again. And now the boat has the front of the hull cut away, and it's starting to look a little more like a boat. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a fillet to smooth this edge. It's a pretty sharp edge. I'm going to add a fillet just to add some smoothness. To do that, all you have to do is select an edge, and the pill changes to a context-sensitive menu that shows operations that you can use on that specific item that's selected. So I could either chamfer it, I could fill it, or I could edit that edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select fillet, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to select the lines that continue to the back of this boat. I'm going to select this line on the left, and I'm going to rotate around and select this point and that line right there, so that when I go back to home, you can see I've got both sets of lines that run down the side of the boat. And I've got the manipulator to apply a fillet. And as I click and drag, I get fillets, or if I go too far, you'll notice I get a red exclamation point. That's not a terrible thing. It's just giving you a warning that you're at a point where it can't solve the solution, the fillet. And you just need to back off a little bit and get closer to where you started in order to get a fillet that fits within this boat. And I'm going to run at about 15 millimeters, looks good for me. So I'm going to double click out in the distance to apply that. And now if I rotate, you can see that the bottom of the boat has a curvature to it. Okay, so to finish off the bottom of the hull, we're going to select one more edge to do a fillet, and it chains all the edges all the way around the back of the boat. And I'm going to go ahead and type in 15, just like we did on the front, to round off the back of the boat. Double click anywhere out in the background, or right click and hit OK to apply that. So now I've got my boat. A lot of the hard edges are cut off, so it's not going to be sharp and it's going to be smooth in the water. Now we can move to creating the top of the boat. So to create the next piece, I want to create a pocket here so that we have a railing around the edge. I wouldn't want my little people to fall off my boat. So I'm going to sketch or select from the sketch menu and offset. What that does is it lets me hover over the face that I want to offset to, and then I can hover that over that edge, and it automatically selects the entire loop. And as I move my cursor, it adjusts the distance of offset. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 4 and hit enter, and it offsets that loop 4 millimeters. I now have two profiles, one which is the outside and one is the inside, that I can do modeling operations against. Again, I'm going to go ahead and say extrude. This time, if I drag up, it adds material. If I move down, it actually removes material. So I'm going to go ahead and remove 10 millimeters of material and create a pocket there in the top of the boat. Now, one of the options here, a nice reason we have visualization tools, is if this pocket were too deep, it would cut out down here on the bottom of the boat. So if we change our modeling operations to wireframe, or our visualization options to wireframe, I can actually rotate and see the hidden lines a little bit better. If I zoom in there, you can kind of rotate and see that the edge of that boat is still, or the bottom of that pocket right there, is still far enough away that there's material and it's not going to break through. If I dragged it down further, it would poke out and make a hole in the hull right there. So this looks good. This is kind of a reason you would use visualization, is just to see inside your model a little easier. I can go back to my shaded mode and back to my home view. And now I'm ready to create my control tower. To do that, I'm going to go to my sketch menu and select rectangle. And I'm going to hover over the face I want to draw in. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little so you can see this. If I hover very close to the center of this arc, you'll see a little circle pop up. And that means I'm locked to the center of that arc. So I'm going to left click to start my circle there. And if I hover over to the same point on the opposite side, I see my arrow or my circle pop up. Now I'm not going to left click here, otherwise I would get a rectangle that's a straight line. But what it does is, because I selected that point, it uses it as a snap point. So when I move down here to about the size I want my control tower, and you can pick whatever size looks nice for you. But if I move my cursor over, you can see it kind of snaps to that where that circle was, so that I'm in line with that. And I'm going to left click there. So if I look at it from the top now, you'll see this point and this point are both perfectly in line with the center points of those arcs, which is what I wanted. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that profile I drew. The pill is going to pop up, and it's going to give me my extrude option again. And this time, rather than creating a pocket, we're going to drag up. 70 millimeters works fine. And we're going to create our control tower. So now it's really just a rinse and repeat process of sketching shapes and cutting material away. So what I'm going to do is I'll cut a little window out. So I'll create a rectangle. And I'm going to snap to the edge. If you'll notice, I snap when I get close to that edge. It creates a little X, and it shows me that I'm locked onto that edge. So I'm going to create a little window here. It doesn't matter how big it is, really. I'm going to select that profile. The pill pops up, and I get extrude again. This time, if I drag in, it's going to remove material. And now I have a little window for my captain to look out of. We're going to make a little place for him to stand. So I'm going to select, again, offset from my sketch menu. And I'm going to offset that edge inside 4 millimeters. So now I have a new profile that I can use to cut material away. I'm going to just remove 10 millimeters of material there. And I now have a pocket. Now that's not exactly what I wanted. To just make this a little cleaner, I'm going to use this face. I actually didn't want to offset this back wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this face so that it's in line with this back face. And to do that, if I select that face, the pill shows things that I can do with that face. One of them is press pull. So if I use that press pull option, I can press or pull this face to adjust where it needs to be. So one of the nice things about being in the extrude or in the press pull mode is if I select any face, it will automatically align the face that's selected with the face I picked to just help with your alignment. So now if I double click, it removes that wall and it makes this one big flat flush wall in the back. So it really looks like I only offset these 3 faces. And that looks good for me, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Next, just to finish this off, I think I want to slice off this back edge a little bit to make it a little more aerodynamic maybe and add a little style. So I'm going to select that line. And when I do, again, I get my fillet option and my chamfer option in my pill. And I'm going to select chamfer. And I'm going to just drag this down a little bit to wherever it looks good. That 17 works fine for me. So I'll double click to apply that. And I now have my boat control tower complete. So the next part we want to do is create the smokestack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate so that I'm looking at it from a rear isometric so that I can get to this point right here where those 2 arcs intersect. And the reason I want to do that is I'm going to draw a line to create a point right in the center of the boat so that I can make sure my smokestack is centered. So I'm going to start with the draw command, which lets me create lines, and I'm going to hover over the face I want to draw on, and I'm going to move right up into that intersection, and it's going to automatically snap to that end point of that arc. And again, if I draw straight down, it's going to, you see my heads-up display showing me a straight line, and I'm going to place that line and right-click and select OK. So now I know that this point is perfectly centered in the middle of the boat, and I'm going to draw a circle on it. Oops, let me draw a circle on it here. There we go. And when I use that, I'm going to say 20 millimeters, and I'm going to create a circle. And I can now use that circle to extrude a smokestack. So again, from the pill, I'm going to select extrude and drag this up. And I'm going to go ahead and align this to the top face of the control tower. So when smoke comes out, it goes over the tower instead of into my captain's face. So I'll double click to apply that. I could have also right clicked and select OK. Next, I want to draw a circle on the top face here so that I can hollow out my smokestack. And if I hover right near the center, I get a circle there so it shows that they're locked into place. And I'm going to make my circle just however big you want to make it look right for a hollowed out smokestack. I'm going to hit extrude, and then I'm going to select the deck, which will extrude to that shape. Now, it also gives me the option to add drafts. So if I wanted to make that maybe a cone inside, I could do that from here. That's what that circle that runs around the extrude offers you. I'm going to left click when I'm at 0 to lock in the 0 draft angle. And now I can double click and I have a hollow smokestack. So that is how to create this boat. It took us about 20 minutes with some explanation. Once you get really good and get the hang of things, you should be able to create this boat in about 15 minutes, maybe even faster if you really get the hang of modeling. So hopefully that helps provide foundation for how to build things in 123D. I'll look forward to speaking with you again. Thanks.